Brent Faiyaz. For those that don't know who that is, don't worry, I got you covered. Brent Faiyaz is a modern day R&B singer from Columbia, Maryland, who started making music back in 2014, but began to receive large-scale notoriety after being featured on GoldLink's 2016 smash hit Crew. If you were in college when Crew came out, you know it would always go up when that song came out. And since then, Brent has continued to put out music and has released 5 projects since then under his name Brent Faiyaz and also the name Sonderson. His most recent being a studio album titled Wasteland that just dropped on Friday. Musically, Brent Faiyaz is living proof that it's not really what you say, but how you say it, as the lyrical content of his music focuses on hedonism and toxicity and can really rival that of Future's. However, Brent sings these edgy lyrics in the most angelic voice on beats that feel very ethereal and intoxicating. His beats feel both minimalist and rich in its production nature. So today, we're gonna go over how Brent Faiyaz and his team of producers such as Atu, dpat, nascent, and many others strike this harmonious balance. So if you're interested in seeing how I do that, go ahead, keep watching, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment. My name is OG Chizzy Beats, and let's go ahead and get into the cook-up. So when it comes to making beats for Brent Faiyaz, I think that tempo doesn't matter too much because he has songs that range from 80 to 120 or something like that. So just choosing a tempo that you're comfortable with is going to work out perfect for you. So I chose 104. But what is key and king to making a beat for Brent Faiyaz is your sound selection and building textures. So what I did was I went into my favorite VST analog lab and I went into the Millennia Bank and I chose this sound called Cyber Shroom, and it sounds like this. So it sounds super cool, has a nice texture to it, and what I did to that sound before anything was just cut out some of the low end frequency so I can make space for sounds later on that I want to use, and then I added a fruity phaser. If you don't use phasers, you definitely should because it's a quick and easy way to use a stock plugin to bring some life to a sound. It'll just add some panning and really just distort the sound a lot. So I really love using phasers on Brent Faiyaz Type Beats. So once I had my sound figured out, the next thing that I did was build out a chord progression. So this is a super simple chord progression, but I'm going to break it down for you guys. I'm only using 3 chords right here. So this first chord is an F sharp minor 7th. And we know it's a minor chord because it has the 2, 3, 2 spacing. Then we move on to a G major 7th chord. And we know this is a major chord because it's a 3, 2, 3 spacing. Then we add the progression on an E minor 7th chord, and again it has the 2, 3, 2 spacing, so we know it's a minor 7th chord. And we really just repeat that pattern over here. The only thing that looks different is that I've added an A here just to add some tension to this chord, and then I added an A up here again to add some tension. So all together, this is what the chord progression sounds like. So once I had that progression, I decided to go back into Analog Lab and layer this up. Bringing layers in is a quick way to make your beat sound fuller. So I use this sound called Classic Road. And the reason I chose this sound is because it has a little bit more low end frequency, whereas my first sound had high end frequency. So it's really important for you to think about what's filling in my lows and what's filling in my highs whenever you're making any beat. So all together, this is what it sounds like. So the effects that I added to this sound was the Cymatics Origin plugin, which is basically a down sampler. It just makes something sound a little bit more muddled by cutting out low end and high end frequency. So I turned this down to about 9,000 hertz and turned down the saturation and everything like that. And then I just added fruity reverb to make it sound a bit more spacey. So once I had those 2 sounds layered up, I knew it was time for me to move on to my melody. Now, when it comes to Brent Faiyaz's music, you'll oftentimes hear that he has some sort of pluck as a melody or a guitar or both. Since I can't play the guitar very well and I wanted to have this sound something like Price of Fame, I went into Analog Lab again and I went back into the Millennia Bank and chose this sound called Ill. So this is a perfect sound because like in Price of Fame, those plucks usually sound like a dull bell. And what I did to come up with my melody is that I just went into my chord progression and I just strummed some of those notes and kept it extremely simple. So this is what I came up with. So with these three sounds stacked together, this is what I had. So at this point, we have the basis of our beat. So what you want to do to build out the rest of a Brent Faiyaz type beat is add as many weird sounds that you can that really complement and add that texture and fullness and richness to the beat. So what I did is that I went back into Analog Lab and I went into Kill September's Opiate Bank and found this sound that I really loved called Underwater Droplets, and this is what it sounds like. So what I decided to do was take the chords that I had used before and copy and paste them here and take out these notes right here while extending this. Then I went into the mixer and I added this plugin called Initial Reverse. If you know me and watch my channel, you know I love reversing things, and this plugin makes it super easy. And I put it on the 4th bar reverse setting. Then I added again a fruity phaser. I added a fruity chorus because it adds a different sound and feel to it. And then I added this plugin called an Ozone Imager 2 to really make the sound very close and needle-like, if that makes sense. So all together, this is what it sounds like. Now that sounds extremely cool, and not only does it sound good, but the way that it reversed, it fits into the pockets of when there's not too much sound coming from my chords. As you can see, this comes in as this starts to teeter out, and that's very important to factor whenever you're adding sounds. You want to make sure that every sound has its own pocket. The next thing I did was went back into Analog Lab and shows another sound that I love called Girls Like ARP, and it's an arpeggiated sound, so that naturally has a lot of texture to it, and I just sprinkled it in occasionally into the beat. The next thing I added was this synth sound from the Aperture kit, and I used it to build this very simple falling melody that ushers in the second half of the loop, and it sounds like this. And the only thing I added to this sound was ambient, which is a free reverb plugin, and it really just made it sound very large and spacey. So at this point, I was pretty much done with my melodies and almost all of my textures, and I knew it was time for me to add a signature bass. If you listen to Brent Faiyaz's music, you know that he almost always uses some sort of real sounding bass, so I went ahead and added that. Again, I went into the Aperture kit and found this bass called Technical, and before I came up with my melody, I went in and added some sounds to kind of distort it a little bit. So I added Fruity Fast Distortion just to give it some buzz to it, and then Fruity Blood Overdrive just to kind of kick up the bass a bit. Once I had that, I went ahead and made this bass progression that complements the sounds around it, and this is what it sounds like. So to tie up this Brent Faiyaz loop, what I wanted to do was add a perk loop and some vocal chops and then a few other extra textures to this. So in terms of the vocals, I went into Splice and I found this loop that I liked and I reversed it because that's what I do, and this is what it sounds like. So using that, I chopped it up and I used different parts to come up with my own vocal chop, and then I added a perk loop. Again, I went into Splice and found this perk loop that I liked, and it sounded like this. And I decided to chop that up and use another perk loop that sounds like this. And add one more sound to essentially make my own perk loop. And the last textural elements that I added was this audio sound of some ambient noise, people talking in the background. Then I added this guitar lick texture sound that I found. And I added this textural element. And last but not least, I did add this guitar lick from the Flex Ace Nylon Light guitar that sounds like this. So all together, this is what the loop sounds like. Finally, in terms of my drums, I kept this pretty simple. This is what it sounds like. So when making drums, I think it's very important to realize that Brent Faiyaz and his producers love using like live sounding drums. So I'm going to go through this element by element so you guys can see the drums that I use and the pattern that I came up with. So this is the kick drum that I used and the pattern I came up with. Then I added this rim as my clap. Then I added this simple 2-step hi-hat and I just alternated my velocities. Then I added this perk. Then I added another perk. And then I added another perk and I basically followed the same routine for the 2-step hi-hat, but this is what it sounds like. Then I added this open hat. And then I ended it out with this tom drum, which I love, and you'll actually hear this a lot in Brent Faiyaz's music. So those are the drums, and while I was adding the drums, I was like, I want to add one more layer just to like fill this completely out during the hook. So I went in and added this string, and I think it completely ties the beat together, and this is what it sounds like. And all together, this is what we have. So I hope you guys really enjoyed this video, and I hope you guys enjoyed this new format that I'm trying out with like a little bit of intro in the beginning. If you guys did, leave a like, leave a comment, leave a thumbs up. Let me know down in the comments what you guys want to see from me next, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you guys so much.
Chizzy. Chizzy.